So this morning's prelude begins our service with Ed Deller, the voice of Ed Deller. So let us settle in for worship this morning.
May nothing evil cross this door, and may ill fortune never pry about these windows. May the roar and rain go by. By faith made strong, the rafters will withstand the battering of the storm. This hearth, though all the world goes chill, will keep you warm. Peace may walk softly through these rooms, touching our lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into a shrine. With laughter drown the raucous shout, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold love in.
My friends, good morning. And welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and to serve the community. And let me just say at the top of our service how touching it is to see our building this morning. For those of you who have not been in our building, those were pictures of our building. For those of you who have been in our building, I'm sure that that was a deeply touching experience. So let's just hold that and hold a deep breath together. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. And however vulnerable you have been, or however many times you have chosen to remain less than vulnerable, we welcome you. We welcome all of you. It is good. It is good. It is good to be together this morning. If you are here visiting with us for the first time this morning, we especially welcome you. Please take a moment to fill out the visitors form in our chat at your leisure. We would love to be able to welcome you beyond the bounds of this virtual space. So please take a moment to fill out that visitor form. We are so glad you are here this morning. As we gather today, we want to invite you to pop into the chat and offer a greeting. You can find this at the top or at the bottom of your screen or to the side. It's just sort of got an icon of a text bubble and the word chat next to it. Please pop over there and offer us a greeting this morning so we can know that you are here and so that we can welcome you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to worship at First Universalist Church. This morning, you may have been singing already, but our first hymn is hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. So let us join hearts and voices in singing together this morning, recognizing that even as we are singing muted in our own homes or wherever we are creating a song across our city of Rochester and the country and the world. So let us join hearts and voices in singing hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in place, when our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of a sacred place, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Awesome. Let our hearts be in a holy place, open, expansive, ready to receive. In yoga, there are poses to open the heart by stretching out the chest. Sometimes you will clasp your hands behind your back, or you take a pose that stretches your chest open, wide, expansive. Let us take a moment to open our hearts this morning. Let our hearts be in a holy place, open, expansive, ready to receive, ready to share with others, ready to lay a burden down, ready to lean into relationship, ready for worship together. Come, let us worship together. As we light our chalice, will you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life, thus doing covenant with each other and with all. If you cannot cry at church, when can you cry? These words from our former interim minister, Reverend Martha Munson, speak to the heart of how we are here with one another. If we cannot be vulnerable at church, where can we be vulnerable? If we cannot come here to lay our burdens down, where do we go? It is in times like these that we need one another more than ever. Yesterday, quite a few folks from our church came together to give food donations to the community food cupboard at Nestor Street. This church has had a long-standing relationship with this food cupboard, providing food and essentials to those who would otherwise be without. As the coronavirus continues to wreak havoc in our lives and in the lives of our neighbors, this morning's offering goes to further that relationship, to continue giving to a place that is providing food to those in deep need of it. Our monthly Share the Plate offering will go to support the community food cupboard this morning. Please click the link in the chat to give online to First Universalist Church, or feel free to send a check to the church office. Thank you in advance for your generosity.
Good morning, friends. What does it mean to be vulnerable? Does it mean that you're weak and exposed? Does it mean that you feel safe, that you can trust? Is it an act of deep trust and connection? Or does it mean that you can learn from your mistakes? Today's story from the collection Rhinos and Raspberries, one of my favorites, is The Blind Man and the Hunter, a West African tale of learning from your mistakes. There are not a lot of pictures, but here's one of them. It says that the man who is blind can see with his ears. Once there was a man who was blind, who lived with his sister in a hut near the forest. Now this man was very clever. Even though his eyes saw nothing, he seemed to know more about the world than people whose eyes were sharp. He would sit outside his hut and talk to passers-by. If there were things they wanted to know, he would tell them, and his answers were always the right ones. People would shake their heads with amazement. How is it that you are so wise when you have no eyes to see? And the man would smile and say, because I see with my ears. Well, the man's sister fell in love with a hunter, and they were married. When the wedding feast was finished, the hunter came to live with his new wife and his brother-in-law, the man who was blind. But the hunter had no time at all for her brother, the blind man. What use, he would say, is a man with no eyes? Every day the hunter would go into the forest with his traps, and every evening when the hunter returned to the village, the man would say, please, tomorrow let me come with you hunting. But the hunter would shake his head. What use is a man with no eyes? One evening, the hunter was in a good mood. He had returned home with a fat gazelle. His wife had cooked the meat, and when they'd finished eating, the hunter turned to his brother-in-law. Well, very well. Tomorrow you will come hunting. So the next morning they set off into the forest, the hunter with his traps and spears, leading the man who was blind by the hand. Suddenly, along the path, the man stopped. Shh, there's a lion. The hunter looked about, but he could see nothing. There is a lion, said the man, but it's all right. He's fast asleep and won't hurt us as long as we are quiet. Sure enough, as they went along the path, there was a great lion fast asleep under a tree. The hunter asked, how did you know about the lion? Because I see with my ears. They continued deep into the forest until they came to a clearing. The hunter set one of his traps and showed his brother-in-law, who was blind, how to set another one. Then the hunter said, we'll come back tomorrow and see what we've caught. The next morning, they walked into the forest where the traps had been set. The hunter saw straight away that there was a bird caught in each trap. And he saw that the bird caught in his trap was a little gray one, and the bird in his brother-in-law's trap was a beauty with feathers of green and crimson and gold. We've each caught a bird, he said. I'll fetch them out of the traps. And what did he do? He gave his brother-in-law, who was blind, the little gray bird, and he kept the beautiful bird for himself. Then they set off home. As they walked, the hunter said, if you're so clever and see with your ears, then tell me this. Why is there so much anger and hatred in this world? And his brother-in-law, who was blind, answered, because the world is full of so many people like you who take what is not theirs. And the hunter was filled with shame. He took the little bird from his brother-in-law's arms and gave him the beautiful one instead. I'm sorry, he said. As they walked, the hunter said, if you're so clever, then answer me this. Why is there so much love and kindness in the world? And his brother-in-law, who was blind, answered, because the world is full of so many people like you who learn by their mistakes. From that day on, if the hunter heard anyone ask, how is it that you are so wise? He would put his arm around his brother-in-law's shoulders and say, because he sees with his ears and hears with his heart. So ends our story for today. Thank you, friends.
Friends, I want to invite you into this reverent time of sharing the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. Now, I know for some of you that you noticed that our chat was accidentally disabled. Thank you for texting me. We've got it worked out now. So here we are. So let us just take a deep breath. If you'd like to, you can place a hand over your heart to be able to listen from this heart-centered place as we share in the joys and sorrows. As we place stones into a glass, I will read aloud the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. All are invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat that we may hear from our gathered community here. So this morning, we have a joy from Jan Hickman. Her granddaughter, Molly Iglinski and Dave Hodeling were married September 6th in a lovely backyard wedding at her parents' home. It was a beautiful afternoon for this joyous occasion. We share a sorrow for our country. Our hearts are heavy with the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. May her memory be for a blessing. We share a sorrow for our city. We're holding the 16 young people, 14 injured, and 2 killed in a recent mass shooting in Rochester. We especially hold the families of Jarvis Alexander and Jaquela Young, the 2 young adults who were killed, in our tender care. Our hearts are hurting in our city. We are wishing all who observe Rosh Hashanah a sweet and hopeful 5781. And a joy from Kathy Flynn that her car is filled with food for Nestor Street. Many thanks to all who came, and let us just remember and soak in the abundance. A sorrow for a friend in distress from Karen Labraco. The joy that we could be present. And sharing in the joy of just being together today. A joy that our church is open for the Rock Street medics and actively serving social justice. And an update from Dwight Montague that his son in Portland, Oregon is safe despite the dangerous air. A joy from Ezekiel McGee, happy to return to this church after a long absence. Ezekiel, welcome back, welcome home. We're so glad you're here. And friends, I will just drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all of the joys and the sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. May all, may all, may all be held in the heart of love. The beginning of our prayer time this morning, I have to share with you all that I had grand plans of sharing this beautiful video of a queer Rosh Hashanah blessing for us this morning. And that was my plan on Friday afternoon. And as we know, so much has changed in our city and in our country and really in the world since Friday afternoon. So the plan has changed. And I'll invite you to just take a deep breath with me as we have been breathing through this morning, and for us to just settle in for a moment of prayer or meditation or getting in touch with that deeper knowing, that deeper intuition, whatever feels comfortable for you in this moment, as we know we are a community of many beliefs and many theologies. So let us just lean in for a moment of prayer and meditation this morning. Our collective hearts in Rochester are breaking, have been broken, are broken open. Heavy with the events of this weekend, heavy with the weight of yet another mass shooting, this time in our hometown. Heavy with the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a leader who held the key to so much hope. Heavy still with the grief of COVID-19. Heavy in the wake and in the present moment of the uprisings following the death of Daniel Prude. Let us take just a deep breath and a collective sigh together. Let us breathe into our chests and let out a noise that is indicative of what we need. A groan, a sigh, an ugh, a sob. Let us breathe in and let it out. Lay it down here. Our hearts are heavy. Some may be feeling hopeless, feeling despair. Some may be feeling a sense of resolve, a newfound motivation to fight. Some may be feeling nothing at all, numb, shaken, empty. Some may be feeling like none of this is affecting our daily lived reality. But our collective hearts are heavy. We must honor the heaviness to remember the hope. We must honor the despair to remember what can be done. We must honor the heartbreak if we are to break down the walls of human separation. To remember we cannot spend too much time in despair. To remember ours is a process of owning where we have turned the other way in order to commit to returning to our hearts. To remember that we are a people of hope, grounded in the reality of human power and witness and healing. Our collective hearts are heavy, and we have a duty to turn towards hope, to hold the legacies of those who have died, to hold the fact that we are all interconnected, not one of us outside of the bounds of this love and this connection. To hold the fact that when a shooting happens in Rochester, it happens to all of us. Let us hold on to that hope as well as the heaviness. Let us continue to remember and recommit. Let us tend to the honesty of our hearts, that we may be better human beings, more open-hearted human beings for it all. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. Now let us hold a time of collective and imperfect silence. Wherever you are, let us join in this important ritual we return to again week after week to sit in some stillness and to allow that deeper inner knowing inside each of us to speak, to remain silent, to guide our days ahead. Let us join in silence together now. Let us join together in singing hymn number 1013, Open My Heart, our hymn of contemplation this morning.
Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give.
For context, this morning's reading comes from James Finley, and it was entitled A Mutual Vulnerability. James Finley is a therapist and a spiritual director who supports men in authentic spiritual direction and development. This is an excerpt from a talk he gave at Illumen, an organization that works towards those same ends. And he gave an unpublished talk this past year that was sent out by Richard Rohr in one of his weekly emails from the Center for Action and Contemplation. He writes, "When I went in to see Thomas Merton for direction, I was 18 years old. I was just out of high school. Because of my trauma history, I had issues with authority figures. So when I went to try to talk to him, I hyperventilated. I had a hard time breathing. And he said to me, "What's going on?" I told him. My voice was shaking, and I said, "I'm scared because you're Thomas Merton." I can remember being so ashamed because I wanted him to think well of me. He said to me something that really was a turning point in my life. I worked at a pig barn at the time. He said, under obedience every day after afternoon work before Vespers, I want you to come here every day and sit down and tell me one thing that happened at the pig barn each day. I remember thinking to myself, I can do that. And it leveled the playing fields. Just two men sitting in a room talking about daily work, and he became a father figure for me. I learned a big lesson, which later really was to affect me in my own therapy and as a therapist, that when you risk sharing what hurts the most in the presence of someone who will not invade or abandon you, you can learn not to invade or abandon yourself. Even deeper down, when you risk sharing what hurts the most in the presence of someone who will not invade you or abandon you, you can discover within yourself what Jesus called the pearl of great price from Matthew 13:46. Your invincible preciousness in the midst of your fragility. So through humility and vulnerability, the true strength of being empowered, my manhood came forth, sitting in this room. Out of all the studies I've done with Merton and my talks on Merton, I think nothing went deeper than talking with him about the pigs, because that's compassion. So this is my sense of manhood, I guess, a radicality, a spirituality that gives me the courage to face the most broken and lost places within myself, discovering through that acceptance the oceanic, tender mercy of God that sustains us in that brokenness, so that by learning to be this way ourselves, we can pass it on to others. We can be someone in whose presence it's safe to be vulnerable and to be open and truly courageous and strong and powerful, as Jesus was strong and powerful in the truest, deepest sense of the word. This beautiful piece was chosen by our music director, Brock Chesvold, called Teach Me How to Be Vulnerable by Shabaka and the Ancestors. Just want to honor that. Friends, as I was thinking about what to say to you, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but it feels like we may not have pigs to talk about with one another, but it sure feels like we are shoveling in Rochester right now. It feels like we are wading our way through the muck. And it is in these moments that it is my privilege and my honor and my duty and my job to ask you, how are your hearts? How are your spirits? How are you doing? It is mornings like these when it feels like we could all use a check-in with someone from church and a big hug. Likely our anxieties about the election have been raised since the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on Friday night. Our anxieties about the future of our country have probably gone up too. Our city has borne witness to a mass shooting involving young adults, too young, often those we look to for the hope and for the future of Rochester. Uprisings continue at City Hall, now lovingly named the People's Hall. COVID continues to unfold in our communities, in our country, in our world. If it felt like we could get through this before, it might feel like more of a struggle now. It might. I asked many of you yesterday on my Facebook page how you were doing. And I was so grateful to see some of the tender vulnerability there, to see folks sharing with each other, offering each other support, engaging in conversations about resources to get through this. That is church. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to do. We got to check in on one another. We got to check in on each other's hearts and spirits and minds. I am here this morning to tell you that it is okay to not be okay. I'm here this morning to tell you that it is also okay to feel okay in this present moment. There's no one right way to feel. And we cannot deny that all is not right with the world. That news will sit with us differently at different times, yet it feels like we have been collectively holding things together. At least I have been trying to here and there. We don't need to hold it all together when we are falling apart, when it feels like the world is falling apart, when violence and trauma are a part of the daily lived experience of our city. We can accept that all is not right with the world and that all is not right with us. And from here, from there, from that place, we can get vulnerable with one another. As I look towards our religious tradition this morning for some semblance of grounding in this moment, it is comforting to know that our oft forgot and overlooked third principle of Unitarian Universalism is acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to grow spiritually in community. Right now, we have an opportunity to accept one another exactly where we are at. And I believe the growth comes when we are willing to share with one another the honest truth of our own tender experiences. Growth and heart opening happens when we are willing to take that risk and talk about what is going on inside of us with someone else. But it's complicated, right? Our reading this morning did a good job of pointing that out. It is complicated. Many of us here have life experiences that prompt us to be hesitant to trust. And I appreciate James Finley's willingness to speak openly about how this happens with men specifically. For some of us, we have had traumatic experiences that have taught us not to trust or taught us to attempt to handle things by ourselves. We have become hesitant to turn to someone in authority to talk about our lives for fear of that person handling whatever personal power we have gained, or for fear of handing whatever personal power we have gained over to someone who may abuse that privilege again. To find someone to be honest with takes time. It takes attention and intention. We don't just want to open our hearts to anyone and everyone. Regardless of our previous life experiences, the contents are tender. We can be easily wounded by the judgment of another. To share that we are not okay, and even to share that we are okay in the midst of what seems like really hard times, this is courageous work. Sometimes it takes starting out with what happened at the pig barn that day, or one thing that's gone on in your day. It starts with consistently showing up in each other's lives for a bit of time. And I love that we can get deeper from there, that we can go deeper with one another in order to grow spiritually. Because the reality is that not one of us grows spiritually alone. It is a part of our shared theology as Unitarian Universalists. We grow together. We grow when we acknowledge the interconnected web of our existence. We grow when we gather and when we hear or learn a different perspective from the ones contained in our own heads. That's likely why we are seeing a bunch of support circles popping up yesterday throughout our city. Support circles at our sibling church, Spiritus Christi, today. They're hosting one from 12 noon to 6 p.m. in the wake of this mass shooting. Folks are making space for families and young people to process together. People who were present there and people who were affected in a different way. Not one of us needs to exist and heal and grow alone. We cannot fully heal in isolation. And I should know, I have tried it. I have had many times on my spiritual journey when I have wanted to do it all on my own. Is there anyone else out there who's been in this boat? Any other folks? Yeah, thank you. Thanks for helping me feel less alone. But what I am learning, what I continue to learn, what I continue to come back to is that we need one another to really grow and thrive. We can survive on our own, sure. But that encouragement towards spiritual growth happens in our congregations in that oft forgot third principle for a reason. We grow in relationship. We thrive in relationship. And vulnerability is a key ingredient for authentic relationship. I wonder, who can you be real with in your worst moments? Who can you be real with when you are celebrating something you wouldn't often share? Who can you show those honest parts of yourself to? Who do you not have to pretend with or wear a mask? This time of coronavirus has been a clarifying time. If we have to make a concerted effort to spend time together, taking precautions like meeting outside, wearing masks, keeping physical distance, you better believe we're going to want to spend time with folks that we can have authentic relationships with. This is not a time for fake friends. This is a time to get vulnerable with others because we, each one of us, are going through a lot. And having a place, person to lay a burden down with is essential. In these relationships, we learn our worth. In these relationships, we recognize we are deserving of care. In these relationships, we show up for one another and for ourselves, because as James Finley reminds us, when you risk sharing what hurts the most in the presence of someone who will not invade you or abandon you, you can learn not to invade or abandon yourself. Even deeper down, when you risk sharing what hurts the most in the presence of someone who will not invade you or abandon you, you can discover within yourself what Jesus called the pearl of great price, your invincible preciousness in the midst of your fragility. You are precious, even in moments when you feel fragile, especially in moments when you feel fragile. By having others show up for you without fear of abandonment, each one of us learns to show up for ourselves and not abandon the truth inside us by keeping silence or remaining compliant or hanging on to a story we are telling ourselves that just isn't true. And where Finley really got me is with this invasion piece. It's quite a strong word. I imagine what he means is that people who will not invade us are people who are not trying to fix us or get inside our heads. To invade someone's vulnerability is to say, no, actually, this is what you're experiencing. It's not what you're saying. Or to just flat out deny your experience. And he makes the point that we can do these things to ourselves. We can attempt to believe that we need to be fixed, or to deny our own experiences, to divert rather than face the honest truth. And we unlearn doing these things in vulnerable relationship with others. I love learning about Finley's work because he works specifically with men in spiritual development and growth. And so much of what is written about vulnerability is focused on women's experiences. I imagine that there are also resources for folks who identify as trans and or non-binary, but the mainstream resources on vulnerability I am familiar with and preach from often come from Brene Brown, whose research focuses solely on women. She writes about sharing her research at an event and then holding a book signing afterwards, where a man came up to her. He waited till the very end. And he came up to her at her little table and he looked her in the eye and said something like, "You wouldn't want to know the truth of what is inside of us as men. You couldn't handle it." And she was left stunned, in tears, thinking about the ways that vulnerability can be such a gendered thing. It is something that femmes and women are so often encouraged to be, and it is something that we socialize boys and men and masculine folks out of completely. How damaging is that for all of us? That our experiences of being vulnerable, our experiences with telling the truth in order to experience healing and understanding have been poisoned by the gender binary. It just seems entirely unfair on all sides. It seems to me we are in need of some collective healing there around gender as a broader human community. And it also brings me to the thought that vulnerability is so often expected of the marginalized and the oppressed, while those with privilege are encouraged to see our problems as separate and worth handling in a different way, keeping inside, handling on our own, individually. Because this mass shooting happened in a predominantly Black neighborhood in Rochester, those of us who are white are encouraged to not be affected by it. To honor our interconnectedness, to grow spiritually in our religious community, is to see our religious community as the entirety of Rochester, and to stop the narrative that this tragedy is not our tragedy as well. To honor our interconnectedness asks us to explore the broken relationship between Black and brown communities and the police, and to see this as a whole community issue. not just an issue for some. To fully live into this idealized faith that we have all signed up for, some longer than others, of course, we must see the ways our houseless neighbors are hurting in downtown Rochester and recognize the way that that hurt is our hurt. This is big-hearted stuff. These are parts of our heart's ponderings we can share with others and wrestle with, again, in relationship. And so here we are, dear ones. Here we are. Here at First Universalist Church. Here we are accepting one another as we are and encouraging one another to grow spiritually in this community. I wonder what you might do today for your own spiritual growth. I wonder if there is someone that you can reach out to and be honest with. I wonder how complicated that might be in discernment about who is safe and the expectations that have been layered onto you by our broader society. What I know is that hope can be found in knowing we are not alone. What I know is that at the heart of our religious tradition is the knowledge that all are loved, and we act on that faith when we offer another a loving presence and when we learn to love ourselves better in relationship. What we know is that none of us can heal and grow in isolation, and this is such a complicated time to have that understanding, especially as we physically distance and do our best to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe. And yet, our very lives rely on us reaching out to connect with those we can be honest with. May you know who you can be vulnerable with. May you honestly face some of the barriers to sharing the truth of your experience and find ways to heal in relationship. May you be seen and understood in community. And may you grow spiritually when you take the risk to lean into relationship and to lean on others. Here we are, First Universalist Church. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. And this morning, as we enter into a time of singing with one another, our final hymn is hymn number 1021, Lean on Me. We invite you, right? This seems appropriate. We invite you to remain muted and sing out joyfully from home in this beautiful Bill Withers song. I just love Bill Withers. Again, creating a collective song from wherever we find ourselves. Let us join in singing together.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's When you need a hand, we all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem, but you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. We all need somebody to lean on.
Well, friends, we will never get it perfect, but we will always do it right. So let us join in extinguishing our chalice flame this morning. Let us read together the words printed on your screen or in your order of service, if you are here with us over the phone. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. And my friends, we are not able to be physically together, but let us honor our connections here in this space, in this sacred space of our Zoom services. I invite you to turn your view to gallery view and to reach your hands out to the edge of your screen that we may honor the connections here, honoring the most important ritual oftentimes of our services at the end, of holding hands and feeling that connectedness, knowing we are not alone. This morning, may you go forth knowing who you can be honest with. May you go forth knowing that none of us, not one of us, heals in isolation. We are not alone. May you go forth to be that beacon of hope to another, and may you know those in your life who are that beacon of hope towards you. May you know you are loved. May you take that with you wherever you may go in your days. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. And as we come to the end of our worship service, I'll invite you to type into the chat during our beautiful postlude from Brock, "Lean on me." Please join us in typing these words into the chat together.